He thinks he finally sees the light of how he's going to actually get out of here, but turns out that's not actually a light or an exit. That light is actually an avalanche that is coming to crush you. Welcome to Sodor. This is Thomas the Tank Engine, and he has had many iterations and models over the decades. Thomas the Tank chugged his way into our families and into our lives with a simple show that had simple morals and what all kids love, trains. But upon adult review, some of the episodes, specifically from the classic model era and the CGI era, they carry some rather questionable lessons underneath their cheery British veneer. You may or may not know that I am a mother to two little boys that are 5 and 6 years old, and they are completely obsessed with trains and Thomas the Tank Engine in general. We are a huge Thomas house. The sheer amount of money that we have invested into Mattel and the Thomas franchise is substantial. I have sat through hundreds and hundreds of hours of Thomas content. And when I say Thomas content, I mean the shows, the shorts, the clips, the fan edits. Did you know there were fan edits? Everything has a fan edit. Always assume there's a fan edit. The first episode we're going to look at actually comes from season 1, and we are in the classics era. So these trains look kind of weird just by our standards. And here we have Henry. This is Henry. And isn't Henry just such a precious name for like a little engine? A precious name for the sweet little green engine. Henry is a proud green engine, but one day he stops in a tunnel to avoid the rain. He doesn't want the rain to spoil his new paint. He just got this new paint done and he does not want it to be spoiled. It's green and it's very beautiful. And so he stays in the tunnel while it's raining in order to avoid getting wet. It's actually later revealed in a movie that comes out later, but is actually a prequel, that Henry actually has a crippling phobia of water and of rain. So it's actually a phobia. So you would think that would call for some bit of compassion, right? This is Sir Topham Hatt, also known as the Fat Controller in the UK version of the show, which is interesting. He's in charge here. He runs this strange railway full of sentient, subservient locomotives. So instead of showing compassion to an engine who is actively in panic mode, and after multiple attempts to both push Henry out of the tunnel using another engine and pull him out using another engine, Henry is not budging. He does not want to go out in the rain right now. So after multiple failed attempts, the Fat Controller orders him to be bricked up in the tunnel. And I quote, "for always and always and always." And only thing left, I'll put the picture here. The only thing left is Henry's sad little face peering out from behind this wall. The audacity. This is a show for toddlers. The other engines pass by.
And Gordon would say, "Boop, boop, boop. Serves you right." Poor Henry had no steam to answer. His fire had gone out.
The other engines pass by and they just taunt him. Now, in the next episode, he is eventually freed. So what is the lesson here? We could even play a fun game. So episode 1 down below, guess the lesson. Leave it in the comments down below. We'll see if you're right. So what is the implied lesson or moral here? It is obey authority and do your duty or face dire consequences. The intended lesson was about not letting vanity or stubbornness or your own comforts and needs, I guess, stop you from being really useful. Being really useful is a really repetitive theme throughout the show as a whole. It's so much so that it's like ingrained in each one of these locomotives as like their identity. It's like ingrained in them as their number one purpose is to be really useful and to avoid confusion and delay. Those are like the things that we're doing. We're trying to be very useful all the time, and we're trying to always avoid There it is, causing confusion and delay. However, the execution of these values is extreme. Henry's punishment for just a minor act of defiance is essentially permanent solitary confinement, which is cruel and unusual punishment. It's legitimately defined as cruel and unusual punishment, even for a train engine, I guess. The narrator, as the show is going on, even says that Henry deserved his punishment, implying that disobedience warrants this severe retaliation. As someone who just walked away from organized religion, this feels like home to me, Sodor does. This authoritative, rigid conformity, authoritarianism. This is it in a nutshell, is right here on Sodor. The fat controller comes off as this ruthless boss that's always enforcing productivity at any cost. He literally bricks an employee, or I guess an engine. He literally bricks an engine into a tunnel to make an example out of him to the other engines. That's crazy.
Eventually, even Sir Topham Hatt gave up. "We shall take away your rails," he said, "and leave you here until you're ready to come out of the tunnel."
Henry's entire identity and value is entirely wrapped up in his ability to be really useful. And if he won't work as expected, he's not just fired, he's literally entombed. It's a really inadvertently dark take on toxic productivity culture and on punishment, which in my house, we're just really anti the concept of punishment. And that's another major thing that we differ from with the religion thing. It's just this idea of authoritarianism. Thomas the Tank Engine was created by the Reverend Wilbert Awdry. He was the railway reverend, and he wrote the original story, and he was not soft on discipline. He was obviously an authoritarian. So the subtext is that authority must be obeyed without question, and a work or else ethos was being presented to children. So for a kids series, this episode escalates extremely quickly. You've got little Henry who just is trying to get out of the rain, and then suddenly now he is imprisoned. And it's hard not to laugh somewhat nervously at just how absurdly harsh their HR policies are on Sodor. He didn't feel like working today, and so you just bricked up forever. No biggie. So just next time you call in sick, be glad that your boss does not have a pile of bricks handy, ready to brick you into your office. So we're moving to Trouble in the Shed. On Sodor, there are different types of engines. There are steamies, which are steam trains. They run on steam. So they run on coal and fire. Then you have diesel, which is just like diesel fuel. And then amongst the steamies, you have the big engines and the little engines. So Thomas is a little engine and Percy is a little engine. Then you have Henry, who we just looked at. He's a big engine. So the big engines, Gordon, this is Gordon, James, and Henry again. Henry is a big engine. They decide that they're fed up. They're sick of shunting their own coaches. These little things on the front of a train, I don't remember what they're called off the top of my head. They run into cars, and that's how they push cars along to where they need to go. So shunting a car. So they're sick of shunting. They don't want to shunt their own stuff anymore. So they feel overworked. They feel insulted, and they decide that they're going on a proverbial strike. They refuse to leave their sheds. Here comes Sir Topham Hatt. What is his solution? What is this brilliant man's solution? He has such creative ideas. This time, he brings in a new little engine. He brings in Percy. So these big engines are complaining that the work is too hard. So he brings in a small engine to do that same work. And Sir Topham locks the three big ones in their sheds. Since they didn't want to come out, he locks them in until they learn some humility. Eventually, the strike is broken, and the big engines are allowed back to work after they apologize, of course. And our lesson? Go ahead, guess. What's the lesson? Down in the comments. Episode 2. Don't be conceited or throw tantrums to get your way. Authority knows best. This episode frames the engine's protest as this childish sulking rather than a legitimate grievance. And it firmly, like the narrator of the episode, firmly sides with the controller's disciplinary actions rather than any compassion or consideration to the big engine. So the message to kids is essentially that complaining about your boss, which would be me, I guess, I'm their mom and their dad. So complaining about us or their working conditions is wrong. They're not allowed to do those things. They can't complain about something mama or daddy said to them. They can't complain about their workload, which my kids don't really have a workload yet. They're little, but that complaining about it is wrong. Being respectful and dutiful is the only acceptable behavior. That's the lesson I see being taught here. It's giving very anti-union, striking. So they go on strike, and that leads to them literally being replaced and isolated. Like, this story showcases, once again, rigid conformity, anti-labor attitudes. The workers or the engines, they band together to voice their discontent, and management responds in a classic union busting tactic of bringing in new labor and just shutting down all the dissent. You have no value until you are really useful to Sir Topham Hatt and the island of Sodor. The engine's identities are once again tied to obedience and usefulness. Stepping out of line is going to result in an immediate punishment that is probably not going to be in proportion to whatever it is that you did. So from an adult perspective, Trouble in the Shed, this episode that we're looking at, is basically labor relations 101 on Sodor, where the boss is this benevolent dictator and collective bargaining earns you a strict timeout. You could almost like imagine these little engines, the little picket signs saying no freight without fair pay, only to have them confiscated by freaking Sir Topham Hatt. This whole episode apparently is strikingly familiar to a real world labor movement, one that happened in the UK in the 1920s. Specifically, it's the 1926 general strike. In 1926, British coal miners protested wage reductions and harsh working conditions. Workers across other industries, including railways, showed solidarity, causing transportation and industry to grind to a halt. It was a defining labor movement that tested workers' rights and management power. These big engines were just participating in their own general strike. This is what the makers of the show thought to teach preschoolers. Let's teach, which is fine. You know, let's teach preschoolers labor relations. You also have to acknowledge that Percy is kind of like a scabber. Percy's like this really sweet engine, but like literally he's crossing like picket lines and like, you know what I'm saying? This like corporate outsourcing is crazy. Basically, Sodor's HR handbook has a closed door policy, meaning if you are not obedient, your door will be closed and you will be locked in wherever you're at. And you will not be able to get out until you choose to comply. So, all right, we're fast forwarding. Our next episode 3 for us, actually takes us to season 5, and it's called Put Upon Percy. He was brought in to do the labor that nobody else wanted to do. And so how's he doing? How's this cute little green engine doing? Turns out he's exhausted from shunting cars and making endless deliveries. He complains that he is being put upon, which seems to be British for overworked. His friends, Thomas and Gordon, tease him for whining. The fat controller also more or less just tells him to keep at it. So Percy is working at the coal mine and he ends up in a really dangerous situation. A mine shaft collapses and he is nearly buried alive in a landslide of rocks and coal. Poor engine. After a dramatic rescue, Percy is filthy and he's really shaken up. And it's only then do the other engines show any concern for this little guy's well-being. Thomas even apologizes for making fun of Percy and Percy's worries. Sir Topham Hatt actually praises Percy for his hard work and his bravery and declares him a really useful engine. and they send him for a new coat of paint as a reward. So Percy, gleaming, freshly repainted, is happy again, presumably also a bit vindicated. What is our lesson here? Leave it below. What's the lesson? Our lesson here seems to be that hard work will eventually be recognized, but you might have to endure some hardship to prove yourself. The overt lesson is about perseverance. Percy sticks to his jobs despite feeling unappreciated and ultimately earns respect by powering through a crisis. So those things are great. He does do those things. But the problematic subtext is that complaining about being overworked is frowned upon. That only by suffering in silence, or in this case, merely getting crushed by an avalanche of rocks in an old coal mine that was dangerous and you shouldn't have been sent to anyways, do you earn any empathy. It suggests that expressing fatigue is silly until something truly disastrous happens. So in short, keep your grievances to yourself and just be useful is the message that I think you get from this. The other engines all mock him for feeling burnt out. I have a quote, "Percy's been put upon, poor old Percy," the coaches sing. It's an environment where admitting that you're overwhelmed is seen as a weakness. And until something dramatic happens, like a rock slide in Percy's situation, until something dramatic occurs, you get no empathy or understanding. So us adults who are viewing this, we can see this clearly as an allegory for workplace attitudes, complaints that aren't taken seriously until there's an accident. But it's also, we go back to the religion thing because that's where I'm at right now. A lot of this is very similar. This idea that you're not allowed to complain, things aren't allowed to be hard, you're not allowed to admit you need help, I'm not going to find you help. It's just such an interesting way to manage a team. And so it's weird to watch it reflected here in children's programming too, like just really poor employee management. So Sir Topham Hatt does eventually reward Percy for all of this hard work that he's doing. Notably, he doesn't do it until after Percy nearly dies on the job. And see, that's what I'm saying. This is manipulation. And if you have a boss or a pastor or a cult leader that maybe you haven't labeled as a cult leader yet, that does things like this, it's worth paying attention to. It's almost like it's like love bombing when something crazy happens. So they're told, keep working, keep going. We've got deadlines, we got things we got to hit, we got stuff we got to do, we got people we got to reach, we got to do all these things. And then you get tired, you get burnt out, you're failing, you're floundering, and they're just like, just keep going. And then when something goes wrong, and they risk actually losing you because something went wrong and it's actually their fault, like because they didn't take any precautionary steps to protect you as an employee or parishioner. So now that you're risking leaving, you get the love bombs, you get the praises, you get the employee of the month parking spot. You're a great hard worker. You're doing such a great job. We're so thankful for you. You're a hero. You get like praise and you get lifted up and it's great. And now you're like rejuvenated and you keep slaving away until the next time you're burnt out and put into danger. I don't know. This feels like the cult. It feels like this feels like a cult I was in one. That's suspicious. That's good. All right. Episode 4. So season 13. This one is not as extreme as the others, but I saw quite a few issues with it. So this is James. James is the red engine. And in season 13, he's sent for a repaint. James is very passionate about his paint. He is very prideful, even vain, some would say, about his shiny red paint. And so he's sent to get a fresh repaint. And in the middle of receiving a priming undercoat, which is a bright pink, he's called away to take the fat controller's granddaughter to her birthday party. James is mortified. He cannot stand that he's going to be seen in a girly color as pink. Despite his efforts of trying to hide and be stealthy and find like to go where no one will see him, basically all of his friends see him. They spot him at some point one by one, and they all, and again, friends, and they all mercilessly tease him. Emily sees him and she giggles. Toby, he sees James and he laughs at him. And then there's Diesel. he actually calls James a big pink steamy. Ugh, this is full on pure ridicule. So he's deeply ashamed that he's pink, but he's still determined to be really useful because that's his purpose in life, is to be a really useful engine. So James carries on. He pushes through. He perseveres. He endures this hardship. He presses through. He goes and gets those kids. To his surprise, the little girls at the party, they love his pink paint. And James finally feels proud. He completes the job. Later, he goes back. He gets getting repainted. And now he's bright red, having learned something. What did he learn? What did he learn? Leave it in the comments below. Episode 4, what was the lesson? My guess is the lesson was not to let pride stop you from doing your job, and that appearances don't matter as long as you are useful and you make others happy. This episode seems to push this, it's okay to look different, / what matters is being really useful / friendly. However, it's presented in this really problematic way, in that James is humiliated for looking different, and he only finds acceptance because his audience happened to like pink. And so that in and of itself is kind of not great. But then it just feels like the takeaway here for a lot of kids is not be yourself. Like, you're not going to watch this episode and walk away thinking, oh, I get to be myself, and that's okay. And some people are going to accept me and some people aren't. And that's okay. That's not what you get. Rather, what you get is that looking odd is going to make your friends laugh at you. These people that are supposedly your friends are going to say some really heinous things, and they're going to call you names. My greatest issue here is the unnecessary gendering of colors. This is a soapbox that I will happily climb up on. The gendering of colors. So to assign genders to colors. And then making kids, or I guess in this case, trains, feel weird and ashamed that they actually like those colors that are deemed feminine or masculine. And you make them feel weird about it. Like, grow up. Colors don't have genders. And pink is often a color associated with femininity. Again, it's a cultural thing. So that means we did it. We made it that way. We can decide it's not that way. But that femininity is weakness. Because, right, so like James is embarrassed because he's pink. Because he's this pink girly engine. And it's seen as like less than somehow. Because he's pink and it's girly. And it's like, femininity does not imply weakness. Women are not weak. Supposed moral is the girls liked it, so pink is secretly okay. It's pretty weak. It's a pretty weak lesson. It still frames pink as acceptable, but only in like specific contexts. Rather than challenging the teasing behavior of the others, it highlights issues of gender norms and conformity. The entire conflict revolves around James being ashamed of a feminine coded color, and the other engines, even his pals, like the good old Thomas, who is supposed to be a goodie. He's supposed to always be the goodie, which he's not. He's kind of insufferable in most of the series. I will just let you know. Thomas is kind of insufferable character. Anyway, so the engines pile on him, ridicule him, make fun of him. It just comes off as like group enforced masculinity. Real engines aren't pink. And it's just weird. Like, why are we doing this in a train show? At its core, James's whole ordeal is about, once again, identity, and it's about being tied to an outward appearance and the fear of not fitting in. And James only manages to overcome this shame by refocusing on his work, his purpose. It's that ethos again, that usefulness that they have to live by. And then by accidentally pleasing children. That's how he manages to like work through it. It doesn't exactly condemn his friends' mockery, though it should have. The narrative kind of shrugs and says, well, at least the kids liked the pink. And from an adult lens, the show missed a really good opportunity to say it's okay for anyone to like any color. Instead, it unintentionally reinforced that his confidence is hinged on other people's approval. Welcome to society. Even the trains on Sodor cannot escape gender norms. It is bleak. Poor James would rather park in a forest than be seen in last season's Pink. But luckily, a mob of kindergartners validated James's new look, proving once and for all that real useful engines indeed can wear pink. So, in essence, Tickled Pink allows for some playful jabs at the show, but it inadvertently gives us a good lesson in fashion anxiety and peer pressure. I am not in the Thomas fandom. This video is not me coming out as like a huge Thomas fan. I guess I am. It's just my life because I have little kids. I've noticed multiple things in my own kids where I'm like, where did you get that? It has to have been from Thomas, where like his son won't want to wear his hair a certain way because he's afraid he'll look silly. And I'm like, where did you get that? And I honestly think he's like learning it from freaking Thomas. The good that Loving Trains and Thomas the Trains has brought into our family far outweighs the negatives, but still, there just are some negatives. I just got busted with Thomas. Someone came and took it. Anyways, let's wrap this up before I get into it. So there you have it. That is my deep dive into the questionable morals and lessons that we might have picked up from Thomas the Tank Engine and the Thomas and Friends franchise and series. If you have not already, make sure you subscribe if you enjoyed the video so that you don't miss out on videos that are to come, and make sure you hit the like button because that really does help a new growing channel. Thank you so much for watching this video. I need to go put my kids to bed and give them back their toys, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.